sounds prolific, these bars are gold tinted, my rhymes are so dope you get high when you listen. Hey, I'm Stuart Follett, aka Stupac, and today we're going to be talking about two of my favorite things, metacommunication and hip-hop music. We learned a little bit about metacommunication during week 3's lecture, and I'm sure some of you used it as vocabulary in your presentations, but I figure it wouldn't hurt to review before we do the deep dive. Metacommunication is really any instance of communication about communication, which technically makes a lot of what I'm going to say today meta-communication. Trippy. So how does metacommunication fit into hip-hop music, you ask? Well, we can really break it down into two basic concepts, internal and external. Internal metacommunication occurs when you have an artist communicating about some aspect of their own communications. In other words, the subject matter of a given line in a verse will have something to do with either the line itself or the artist delivering it. I know that might sound confusing, but basically it's like when Drake spits a rhyme about how good he is at spitting rhymes. With external metacommunication, you're looking at hip-hop songs that provide some sort of commentary on a relevant socio-communicative phenomenon. So sometimes that's racial discrimination, or the state of the music industry, or maybe just the audience expectations. It's communicating about people interacting with other people. It would be like when Kendrick Lamar raps about hip-hop promoting ideals of gang violence and drug dealing to African American youth. While the external type of metacommunication focuses on broader and more complex subject matter, what I want to look at first is internal metacommunication, which focuses on simpler and more explicit subject matter. Because of its simpler nature, internal metacommunication was one of the most commonly used lyrical devices during the golden era of hip-hop, especially with artists like the Wu-Tang Clan, Snoop Dogg, and Nas. Anytime you hear a rapper talking about the complexity of their own rap style, or the quality of their content, or the impact of their music, that's what I call a self-reflexive lyric. It also happens to be a very basic form of internal metacommunication. You guys remember my little rap from earlier?
This rap sounds prolific, these bars are gold tinted, my rhymes are so dope you get high when you listen.
Each line within those two bars is referring to some part of the communication itself. This isn't the only way rappers can use internal metacommunication though. In Kanye West's 2005 hit, Touch the Sky, off the album Late Registration, he reflects on the events and choices that have brought him to the level of success he has currently achieved. Listen to this line where he addresses the contradiction posed by wanting to become a better person, while simultaneously recognizing that his character flaws are partly responsible for the success of his music.
I'm trying to right my wrongs, but it's funny them same wrongs help me write the song.
Beyond the clever homonym use, this line is great because Kanye is using internal metacommunication to emphasize the paradoxical struggle of being both a hip-hop legend and a flawed human being. Speaking of clever hip-hop methods, I was reminded of some of the different ways hip-hop artists communicate their message while reading Chapter 6 of our textbook. Chapter 6 covered presentations, and it described a lot of good principles that translated over into hip-hop. Talk about the audience. Talk about the event. Talk about a moment in your past. Talk about the location. Talk about the purpose or the general idea of the song. These are all things that rappers do. The chapter also discusses this idea of aiming for the head and the heart. Some audiences prefer really technical hip-hop that focuses on lyrical ability and creative flows. Others would rather be moved by a heartbreaking story about losing a little brother to a stray bullet. Versatile rappers like J. Cole and John Wayne who are able to do both are often rewarded with elevated status in the hip-hop community. So, if internal metacommunication is the artist holding up a mirror to themselves or their work, then external metacommunication is the artist turning that mirror around and holding it up to the world or the listener. Many hip-hop artists use their music as a platform to speak out upon relevant social issues. In A$AP Rock's 2016 song Dorks off the album The Impossible Kid, he addresses the popular criticism that hip-hop has become a degraded medium because of egotistical rappers who betray the genre's ideals. In just 4 bars, A$AP delivers what is, in my opinion, one of the most devastating put-downs of all time. Those rappers are so insignificant and their work is so meaningless that they're not even deserving of any credit given to them as an actual threat to hip-hop. Just listen to this.
Each one separately convinced they're sketching with Da Vinci's hands. Delusion turn a communication a prison camp. You fucking dorks
ain't a threat to the cause. There ain't a lesson we can learn from the ostensibly lost.
Now that's what I call metacommunication as social commentary. As I said before though, external metacommunication in hip-hop is not exclusively social commentary. Another kind, outside of lyrical content, is music criticism. Music criticism isn't just metacommunication on the basis that you have someone communicating about someone else's communication. In hip-hop especially, music critics have assumed the responsibility of contextualizing an artist's album for both the avid fans and casual observers. They do this by breaking down the album's initial reception, comparing the album to the artist's prior discography, and most importantly, assessing the artist's ability to adequately approach and articulate abstract assertions for angsty audiences. Anyways, as we move into the final part of the video where I desperately try to connect class material to this subject, I want to point out that we barely scratched the surface here. There's a lot of information and analysis that I had to leave out, but it is what it is. In the video Barnett Pierce on coordinated management of meaning, Barnett Pierce and M. Griffin have this intriguing bit of dialogue right near the start about the difference between talking about our experiences and the experiences themselves. Barnett explains how, because we are faced with this inescapable conundrum of language versus experience, we humans will always have this innate desire to try and explicate meaning in everything we do, including communication. So in this way, hip-hop has become an invaluable part of realizing that objective. Some hip-hop artists have openly accepted this directive as their own, and strive to evolve hip-hop into a medium where even the most abstract and incoherent ideas are able to be expressed. But they aren't there yet. And because they aren't there yet, hip-hop is left with a sort of meta-creative constraint, as explained by Brandon Rodriguez in the video The Power of Creative Constraints. Having creative constraints in hip-hop causes all artists to be either iterative or innovative when it comes to closing that gap between language and experience. What does that look like, you ask? Well, it looks a whole lot like the blue ocean strategy described in the Harvard Business Review's video, The Explainer, the Blue Ocean Strategy. The bottom line message of the Blue Ocean Strategy for up-and-coming rappers is essentially, differentiate or die. The music industry puts a disproportionate amount of pressure on hip-hop artists to consistently produce authentic, original content. At the same time, many young artists are learning that in order to gain merit in this overcrowded industry, they must either do what everyone else does but better, or create their own unique sound that people want to listen to. These three ideas, language versus experience, creative constraints, and the demand for authentic original content, come together to bring me to my final idea. Like good old-fashioned communication, metacommunication is transactional too. As we move into the third decade of the 21st century, I believe we will begin to fully realize that any given message contains a meta-message, an ultimate context, like Pierce implied. In an industry that thrives on fresh ideas and fresher flows, I can't help but wonder, will hip-hop be the key to unlocking the next paradigm shift? Thank you so much for watching, and as always, hang tight, stay loose, and take care.